Hello everyone, my name is Aisha from Group 2 and today I will be presenting my analysis or our analysis of the story The Happy Prince by Oscar Wilde. Some information about the story. Well, first, the story is published in 1888, which is published by the author named Oscar Wilde. This story is a classic tale that combines beauty, sadness, and an important moral lesson. Let's move on to the brief background, shall we? The story is about a golden statue of a prince who sees the poor people suffering in the city. He asks a bird to give away his gold and jewels to help them. The bird stays with him but dies from the cold. In the end, the statue becomes plain, yet God himself rewards both the happy prince and the bird for their kindness. And now, let's move on to the freitext triangle of the story. First, we have the exposition, which is the introduction of the story, where we meet the characters, setting, and situation. The story begins with a golden statue of the happy prince standing high above the city. One night, a swallow, aka the bird, stops to rest on the statue. The prince speaks to the bird and tells him that from his high place, he can see the sadness and suffering of the poor people in the city. And next, we have the rising action of the story, which is the events that build up the story and create tension or conflict. The happy prince asks the swallow to help him by giving away his jewels and gold to the poor. The swallow agrees and delivers the gift to those in need, a sick boy, a poor woman, and a struggling writer, and also a little girl. Although the swallow is supposed to fly to Egypt, he decides to stay with the prince out of love and compassion. Moving on to the climax, also known as the turning point. The Happy Prince gives away everything he has until no gold or jewels are left on his body. The swallow becomes weaker each day because of the cold winter and finally dies at the feet of the statue. At that very moment, the Happy Prince's lead heart breaks into two pieces. And now we have the falling action of the story, which is the events that happen after the climax, leading the story towards its ending. The townspeople notice that the statue is no longer beautiful. They think it is useless, so they pull it down and throw it away together with the dead bird. So evil. Lastly, we have the resolution or ending, which is the conclusion of the story while the problem is already solved. However, God sees their sacrifice and chooses the swallow and the prince's broken heart as the two most precious things in the city. He rewards them by giving them eternal life in heaven, where they will be happily ever after. The end.
I will explain about the setting of the Happy Prince. The story takes place in an unnamed European city. The main landmark is the statue of the Happy Prince, which stands high above the city and can see everything. We also see other important places like the palace for the rich, the poor seamstress house, the young writer's courtroom, and the town square. The time is late autumn, moving into winter, which makes life harder for the poor and also affect the swallow. For the atmosphere is mostly sad and cold, but it also shows kindness and compassion. Overall, for the setting, it highlights the big contrast between the rich who live in comfort and the poor who suffer in hunger and cold. I think that's all for me for the setting of Happy Prince. I will pass for the next presenter.
Hi and Assalamualaikum everyone. My name is Numasha Adriana binti Anwar, and I'm going to be the next presenter. Alright, before I start, quick question. If you were a bird, would you rather spend your winter in the warm sunny Egypt or in a freezing city with a talking statue? Well, the little swallow clearly made the wrong choice, but that's what made this story interesting. So today I will explain the characters and the characteristic in The Happy Prince by Oscar Wilde. Alright, first of all, we have the Happy Prince. When he was alive, he lived a rich and happy life. But as a statue, he sees the real suffering of his people. He becomes generous and compassionate. He gave away all his jewels and gold to help the poor. By the end, he looks dull and ugly, but his heart stays noble and full of love. Next is the little swallow. This bird, honestly, he's supposed to fly to Egypt, enjoy the warm weather. But instead, he stayed to help the prince. He is kind, loyal, and also selfless. He even sacrificed his own life to stay with the prince until the end. How sweet. And honestly, if you ask me, I think he deserved the award of best bird friend ever. And then we have the poor people, like the sick child, and then like the hungry children in the streets, and also the young writer. These people represent the helpless and suffering members of society, and they also remind us why compassion and sacrifice are needed. And last but not least, the town leaders and officials. These guys, not great at all. They only loved the statue when it was beautiful and shiny, but when this statue became dull, they call it useless. They even trends than real problem in their city. So to sum up, the Happy Prince and the Swallow are the real heroes in this story. They are noble, loving, and sacrificial. The poor people, they remind us why kindness is needed. And the officials, they remind us that selfishness and vanity are everywhere. I think that's all from me. I will pass this presentation to the next presenter. Thank you.
So today I'm going to continue our presentation with the conflict of the short story The Happy Prince. So, the Happy Prince faces an inner conflict because while he can see all the misery and struggles of the poor from his high place, he cannot move or act on his own to help them. At the same time, the swallow also experiences a personal struggle, torn between following his flock to the warmth of Egypt or staying behind to assist the prince in easing the pain of the needy. Both characters sacrifice their own desire to bring comfort to others, showing the tension between duty and self-interest. Beyond their personal struggles, the story also reveals a larger social conflict between the rich and the poor. The wealthy live in comfort, ignoring the suffering around them, while the poor endure hunger, illness, and cold. Society itself values beauty and wealth over kindness, which is why the townspeople destroy the statue and throw away both the broken heart and the swallow.
Okay, now I will explain the point of view of the Happy Prince. The story is told by the third-person omniscient narrator. This means the narrator knows everything, like the thought, the feeling, and the action of all the characters. Because of this, we can see the suffering of the poor people, like the seamstress, the sick child, the writer, and the little girl. We also understand the compassion and sacrifice of the Happy Prince and the Swallow. So, this point of view makes the story feel like a fable or fairy tale, and it's helped to deliver a clear moral message about the kindness and sacrifice. I think that's all from me. I will pass to next presenter to present for more detail about this story. Thank you.
Okay, move along. We have team. We have 3 teams. What is it? For the first one is sacrifice. The prince gives away all his riches to help the poor, and the swallow sacrifices his life to stay with the prince. Okay, for the second one is social inequality. Social inequality is the gap between the richest and the poor. The prince once blind to suffering. Now he sees the harsh reality of poverty and injustice. And lastly, the third one is love and friendship. The bond between the prince and the swallow is tender and loyal. Their connection transcends materialism and even death. Okay, next part is literary devices. The first one is irony. Irony is epitome of contrast between expectations and reality, showing how weird, a situation is. The statue of the happy prince is admired for its own beauty, but once he gives away all his riches to help the poor, people call him shabby and tear him down. So in this irony, society values appearance over true goodness. For the next one is verbal irony. The prince is called happy, yet he weeps over the suffering he now sees. His name contrasts with his emotional reality, highlighting the emptiness of privilege. Move along, we have imagery. Imagery is vivid and descriptive language that appeals to sense. We have visual. First one is we have visual imagery. He was covered with thin layers of fine gold, with two bright sapphire for his eyes and a large ruby on his sword hilt. This creates a majestic image of the prince's former glory. The streets look dark and gloomy, and the poor children were shivering in the cold. So this one is evokes the harsh reality of poverty. The last part is allusion. Allusion refers to something well known, not directly explained. The author assumes reader already knows. The ending where an end. This echoes biblical themes of divine reward for selflessness. This creates illustration of a place for dead people with good deeds.